So we'll be covering exploring engagement and well-being in 2024 today, really keeping that human element in those end-of-year check-ins. So we'll cover all those current statistics around engagement and well-being in the workplace, how you can use end-of-year reviews in a really meaningful way as part of the rest of your check-ins throughout the year, how you can renew commitment heading into 2024 in those end-of-year reviews. And then we'll also finish up with some conversation starters for personalized one-on-ones that feel meaningful and supportive. And then a quick review of those Truvelop tools that you already have to drive engagement and support individual growth heading into the new year. So I have a few stats for us here. So in the aftermath of the pandemic, companies really started vocalizing their commitment to employee well-being. But, promising doesn't always equal that true action. So this gap between action and promise has been termed well-being washing. So this is the idea that companies excel in the art of public image, but ultimately are falling short on actually supporting the needs of their employees. So really more of that kind of surface level support, which ultimately is contributing to higher burnout and lower employee engagement. So for that meaningful shift towards employee well-being, cosmetic changes will not suffice anymore. Companies really need to initiate more of those deep, transformative, and authentic shifts championed by their leaders. So I have a few stats here to kind of speak to that. Just 1 in 3 workers feel their employer is delivering on their well-being promises and or benefits. So definitely highlighting that gap there. Organizations with well-being scores have a 21% higher productivity rate compared to those with lower well-being. That's not super surprising. Employees who feel good are going to come to work more inspired, more motivated, get some more work done. Though employees show reduced physical stress symptoms, levels of job-related stress are increasing, and 53% of employees are experiencing burnout. So let's kind of talk about that one a little bit. Physical stress, meaning, like maybe some more of those anxiety, depression symptoms. Employees are feeling nauseous, headaches, they are getting sick more easily. Those pieces are decreasing, but overall on more of that emotional level, on more of that kind of mental level, employees are just burnt out. They might be able to come to work, go through the motions, but they are certainly not feeling good about the work that they're doing. Lastly, employees who feel their company supports their well-being are 38% more engaged. So in our modern world heading into 2024, there are unprecedented demands on employee resilience and adaptability, which really is going to make that well-being a central focus. So it stands to reason, happy, healthy employees are going to nurture a happy, healthy company. So this is really that kind of cyclical idea here that prioritizing the physical, mental, and emotional health of the workforce isn't just, a noble aspiration. It's really the key to enhancing organizations' success. So driving this point home, when organizations invest in their people are going to be investing right back into them. So let's talk about the role of end-of-year review here. So there's kind of 3 pieces with end-of-year reviews. It's first just kind of reflecting on the past year's journey, identifying major learning takeaways, using this to then better inform next steps and priorities for the year ahead. So really being strategic with what we've learned. End-of-year reviews are going to be most effective when managers have data to back up their observation. So we know that historically, end-of-year reviews have not been particularly helpful because we haven't always had data to support those conversations. And so really, they've just been more about the most recent events versus a full view of 12 months of performance and progress. And tying back to our well-being piece here, end-of-year reviews should be celebratory, they should renew commitment, and they should be appreciative, emphasizing the impact that the employee is having. Making sure that the employee knows exactly what is expected of them, that they are aligned on those expectations, and that they feel like they have opportunities to grow with their organization. So it's really about renewing that commitment, renewing that focus and that energy, that engagement, and using this to say, hey, I appreciate all the work that you've done, and I'm excited and invested in your potential. This view should not be new to anybody. It shouldn't be surprising. This is a visual of Truvelop's kind of ideal performance development timeline. So There are a lot of data points that we are collecting throughout the year, starting with an initial talent assessment, layering in daily to weekly sparks, and then ultimately measuring progress with monthly to quarterly to semi-annual evaluations. That is a lot of data points, a lot of touch points, painting the picture of an employee's 12-month journey. So when we head into year-end reviews, it's about pulling all those data points together, looking at those major themes, and using that to identify those greatest opportunities for growth, those greatest strengths that have been gained, and using that for a really strategic look at the year ahead. So Tony, you are my lady on the call. So I have a couple questions. We can go through them if you want. We can skip over them if you want. But really just kind of gauging, how have you used end of year reviews previously? And do you ultimately find them productive?
Well, actually, my Truvelop was down, and I just started on mine. I did one of my end of my reviews before this call, and I got
Awesome.
two more to do. So for the last 2 weeks, I couldn't get on my Truvelop,
Oh, no.
and they got it fixed. So yeah, I'm
Good.
behind,
All good with being behind. At
but
previous
I think they're good.
organizations.
I think they're good though.
Okay. At previous organizations, have you done end of year reviews, and did you find those helpful? Overall, not just maybe this past year, but historically, have you felt like they've been productive?
Yeah, I do,
Nice. Good.
and it's always good for the employees to hear something positive too.
Right.
An overall positivity or where they've grown or whatever. I always think I always enjoyed when I got them.
Exactly. Yeah. Everybody wants to be recognized and appreciated.
Right.
Excellent. So I have kind of 4 pieces here to talk about for renewing commitment and how we can weave those into end of year conversations. So it's about celebrating, reflecting, exploring, and commitment. So kind of really thinking about, like you just said, how can we celebrate our team members and use that to focus on those next steps? So starting with celebrating here, we're just recognizing those major accomplishments, any major milestones met, any new skills gained. All of those sparks and previous evaluations are really going to help bring that story to life. We should have some of those major milestones documented. We can even use that visual of their detailed reporting to help tell that story, especially if there were some major spikes in performance, using that to kind of talk about what really went well, and what you are most excited about for them in the year ahead. End of year conversation should also be as collaborative as possible. So prompting the employee to reflect on what they're most proud of from this past year, what they thought really went well. If they, had any struggles, talking about what went well, what they could, what they were able to do to help overcome those. So that takes us right into our explore piece here. So were they able to overcome those obstacles that they faced? How were they able to overcome them? Who helped them? And really just, exploring and reminding them of those resources and support system that they have in place, and helping them to own that too. So by encouraging them to lead that conversation, they're able to say exactly, what strengths they have and what they were able to do to overcome any obstacles that they experienced. This then takes us into our last piece here with commitment. So thinking about what they would have done differently too. Reinforcing that growth mindset, really thinking about how they can take what they've learned this past year to identify those next steps. How can they expand their strengths? How can they build up any gap areas? And what new goals do they want to start working towards? That's definitely going to shape their learning priorities, learning opportunities, and making sure that they feel invested and bought in to their next steps as well. Moving into our conversation starters here, I have some general ones on this slide, and then I'll break it down to be a little bit more specific based on whether or not you have A, B, or C players on your team. So starting with just some basic ones, what are you most proud of from 2023? This is always a great question to include in any check-in at any time of the year of what are you most proud of right now. Really getting the employee to say what's important to them, what's really been resonating with them, and making sure that they feel like they're making an impact. I also really like the second question. What percentage of your role do you find inspiring? What percentage of your role do you tolerate? And what percentage of your role do you dread? This is especially helpful for identifying any motivators, making sure that you're able to understand what's important to the employee. There's always going to be parts of our job that we don't like, but having the employee talk about the percentage of that is going to be a really good gauge of, is this employee engaged, or are they burnt out? Do they hate their job? Let's figure out how we can get more of those inspirational pieces on their plate and maybe see if we can't cut down on some of those aspects that they dread or just tolerate. Is there anything that you would have done differently in 2023? Again, using this question to kind of shape what we're going to think about for the year ahead, seeing if there's any gap areas, or really just emphasizing the growth mindset and learning takeaways there. What do you want to achieve in 2024? And the important second piece of this question, how can I help? Reinforcing that we're invested in their development and making sure that they do feel supported, that they have people to rely on, to bounce ideas off of, and to really help keep them accountable as they work towards that growth. And then finishing up with a thank you for your continued commitment. Your effort is making an impact. Gratitude and appreciation always go a long way. And it is definitely something that we don't want to miss heading into year-end conversations. It's a great way to just, again, kind of renew commitment, renew those good feelings of I'm part of a team and I definitely am making an impact for any organization heading into 2024. So let's talk about our A players. The whole point of completing evaluations in Truvelop is that we're going to get that view of our talent landscape. We're going to understand where our team's performing today. And then that way we're able to have tailored conversations based on their current performance. So for A players, they're going to need something a little bit different than those B or C players. Our A players are those top performers. So our top priority for them is celebration, recognition, and maintenance. How can we celebrate their efforts? Are we able to tie in any end of year bonuses into the conversation? How can we make sure that they feel valued and like they're contributing at a high level? This conversation is really about appreciation, exploring how we can keep them engaged and inspired. And the outcome goal of this conversation is that the employee walks away feeling valued and feeling like they have a bright future with our organization. So some of those questions that you might want to pull. What are you most proud of from 2023? What percentage of your role do you find inspiring? Do you tolerate? Do you dread? Especially with our A performers, we want to make sure that they don't have a high percentage of dread or tolerate. They're already going above and beyond. So we want to watch for signs of burnout. So just making sure that we continue to keep those inspiring pieces on their plate. Then finishing up with more of just kind of a conversation starter here. You've been an exceptional contributor for us. Thank you for your dedication and for going above and beyond. Your experience is a top priority for us, so help me understand what's important to you. What do you want to achieve and how can I help? So especially for those A players, for people who are already going above and beyond, emphasizing the impact that they're already having and making sure that they know that they are a continued priority and that we want to help them to continue to grow with us. So making sure that they know that we're invested in their experience. For our B players here, these are our steady Eddies. They are getting the job done. They're steady, they're reliable. Our goal for this conversation is to really identify who has the potential to grow. Some people don't want to grow with an organization, and that's totally fine. Everybody has their own role to play. With that said, it's important that we do identify who has that potential and motivation to grow so that we're able to really invest in their experience. The ideal outcome of this conversation is that each employee walks away feeling aligned on their next steps. They know exactly what they're bringing to the table. They know that their strengths are recognized, and they know what they can do to grow. So for our steady performers, our goal is to align their growth opportunities to their motivators so that they feel inspired and engaged to grow with us. They feel supported and they want to explore, and they feel definitely that renewed sense of commitment. So some questions that we can incorporate. What percentage of your role do you find inspiring? Do you tolerate? Do you dread? Again, this question set is really good just for exploring their motivators. What resonates with them from their role, making sure that we have the right pieces in place to make sure that they are able to tap into their full potential. Second piece, thank you for always being someone we can count on. You've been doing a really solid job and we appreciate your effort. Our steady Eddies are meeting those expectations. We want to make sure that they know that they are hitting those expectations, that they are doing a good job. For a lot of younger employees, they need a lot of reassurance that they're doing a good job. And so highlighting that, saying that can be a good way to just kind of get them re-engaged, get them refocused, and making sure that they know that they have potential to do more. And then finishing up, especially with our steady performers here, we really want to understand their motivators to see if they are inspired to go above and beyond. So talk to me about your motivators heading into 2024. I'd love to see if we can explore some learning opportunities that really resonate with you and your goals. So again, making sure that they know that they have potential, that they have a future with us, and that we're invested in that experience. And then our last group here are C players. So our C players aren't quite hitting the mark. Our goal in this conversation is really just figuring out why. Is there a lack of understanding on their job expectations? Do they have all the training they need? Is there anything going on outside of work that's causing them to come to work feeling demotivated or disengaged? Especially with this being year end, hopefully this conversation doesn't come at a surprise. But if it is, let's not harp on everything that the employee is doing wrong. Nobody wants to hear that heading into the holidays. That's not productive, nor is that going to make anybody feel good. So really the tone of this conversation is supportive and it's exploratory. It's about aligning on those expectations, identifying the most impactful next steps, making sure that we're able to hit the ground running in 2024. The focus is always what's next. So really we're ending this conversation feeling focused and excited for the year ahead. So again, some questions, really just kind of getting at exploring the why behind those obstacles. So again, what percentage of your role do you find inspiring, tolerate, dread? If they dread their job, of course, they're not going to be meeting expectations. So let's make sure that we explore first that, just understanding, are they excited about their job or are they here to just kind of fill their role and go home? That is not necessarily a recipe for success. So let's understand that first. And then we'll get into, let's review your job description. I want to make sure that we're on the same page about what goes into your role and the impact that you can have in your position. So again, exploring the why. Is it a training lapse? Do we need to kind of review what those expectations are? If they don't know that they're not meeting the mark, then it's going to be really hard for them to meet the mark. So let's talk about that as well. And focusing on the positive here, the impact that they can have. So talking about, when this goes really well, this is why that matters. Making sure that they know that this role is important, that it does have an impact, and that they are part of a team. And then lastly, what do you want to achieve in 2024 and how can I help? So again, really thinking about those next steps. And if this is true, we want to make sure that this is a genuine and authentic conversation. I have every confidence in your potential. So by thinking about those next steps, let's make sure that they are reasonable, that they're attainable, that this is something that the employee feels good about, and that they set it themselves as well. So making sure that this is something that is coming from both parties and that we feel good about those next steps. Any conversations about those conversation starters? Anything you would want to add or anything you disagree with? All right, moving on. So I have 3 different Truvelop tools here that could be helpful heading into year-end conversations. We'll also be highlighting these in our follow-up email. So if you are curious about where you can do these or where you can find them, you'll have that accessible in your email after this call. The first one being generating a report. So this is something that you can do if you're an employee's direct manager. It is an export of all past performance data that you have on this employee. You can set it for the past year, you can set it for all history. But this just pulls their comments, their sparks, their previous evaluation summaries all into one nice, easy to digest PDF. This is something that you can then share with the employee, or you can just use this as your reference point to gather what you know. But this is a great starting point for painting that picture of what occurred in the past 12 months. If you're looking for some additional guidance, or if you're somebody who likes to take notes during conversations, we also have an end-of-year conversation coaching guide. This is really helpful for just kind of summarizing what we talked about today. What's the goal of end-of-year conversations? What are some questions to ask? And what are our next steps? So using that as your documentation piece to really make sure that we're having a meaningful conversation. And then lastly, you're looking at goal setting. So thinking about the new year, outlining those next steps, our goal setting page will be a good reference point. Last month, we talked a little bit about WHOOP goal setting. So that's also an option. And it could be a good way to really focus on the human element of end of year check-ins and goals going forward. That really takes us to the end. Tony, thanks for joining. If there's not any questions, I'll let you go and I'll let you get back to it. But I do appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know that this was a quick one since we didn't have too many other participants, but
I was glad to join.
awesome. Hopefully you got something out of it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a good one, Tony. Enjoy the holidays and Happy New Year.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.